In relating the CIA model to the data lifecycle, the CIA model consists of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Now, there are dimensions, there are different steps in the data lifecycle. One of the first steps is generation of the data. So in terms of confidentiality, anytime you are generating data, these are the things that you want to look out for. One, ensure that data generated is only visible and accessible to authorized entities. Then when we get to integrity, we have to make sure that the data that is generated is accurate and has not been tampered with or altered. Availability, that means that anything that we need to be able to use to generate the data should be anything that we need to use to generate should be reliable and available when needed. That means that should be accessible. And I remember I was telling you an interesting story about the University of Ghana, where we have an application form for house of residence that will open during the time that we have a new semester, especially at the beginning of the a new academic year. And students, over 16,000 students, have to try and bid their place for just about 2,000 beds. And sometimes you realize that the system that the platform that you are going to use to enter your information it goes down depending on which internet access you are using. Yeah. So we say it should be reliable, that means it should be available when needed. And availability can be influenced by so many things. And I mentioned the fact that sometimes when students apply, by the time they even open their browser, the rules are finished. And it becomes very, very, very quite frustrating for a lot of people. And I was trying to explain to you sometimes because of the way we access the internet and where the data is hosted. Then we also, after generation of the data, when the data is then generated, then we have our collection. Okay, so now when we collect our collection system, that will be able to bring the data together into our system. Only authorized personnel should be able to collect the data. Ensure that the data collected remains consistent and collected without errors. Okay, and then the collection system should be up and running when required. Ensure no data is missed. That's also very, very important. And sometimes the systems are built in such a way that as the data is being generated, when people are actually filling in the forms, and then they start submitting, the collection takes are taking place, then it has to be stored. So it's a very seamless flow of the data lifecycle activities. But anything can be, we can have our systems being affected by any kind of rules that we don't are not well set to be able to get the right data. For example, we want to ensure the data remains consistent and is collected without errors. If you are collecting email addresses and you don't set in a rule that as the person types in the data, that's when the data is being generated, types in the email address, is to check whether the @ sign is there. Because otherwise, somebody can just type richardboateng@gmail.com without putting the @ sign. That is that is not the appropriate way structure for an email. So we want to check whether the structure for an email is consistent with what we want. If we don't do that, you have people typing @ and others not typing the @ others may even end it without the .com or whatever the last part of the email address. So for a very good system to develop, you also want to ensure that you put in the rules for you to check that the data that is being entered it's consistent with what you actually want, the rules that you have set for your data structure, your whole data storage platform to be able to host. If you want to host email addresses in a particular field, it should be email addresses. So you can check the authenticity of the data that is coming and check whether it's expected as it's supposed to be. Another thing that I've also realized is name. For example, some systems, when you print out the full name will come Richard Boateng, but when they are doing a collection, it's not, you don't type in Richard, but you type in surname, the surname, the first name, and then other names. Others also have first name, surname, and then middle name. Now, if you don't put in some information to guide people when you're filling it, somebody may, and you just go write name. Others people may just write even just their first name and not write the rest of the names. So the naming structure that you want, the way you structure the name for that field should be well consistent with the type of data you intend to collect. If you want the first name, second name, first name and second name, make sure you collect it. And if you want to be able to give a room for, if you have to give a room for middle name, especially in Africa, it's important. I remember a system I developed for Nigerians, and I didn't realize that even the middle names can sometimes become three names in the middle. So if you're not very careful, you may think the middle name is just supposed to be another just one name, and you may not make the number of characters that may accept be enough. So you just put it, so you should just only accept maybe just 20 characters. But the person's middle name can even be longer than any other thing that you may think about. So whenever you're designing the system, always think about the fact that what will the user go through, what will the experience the user when he's actually using the platform. Then processing, confidential, any transformation or processing of the data should not leak sensitive information. Integrity, in this sense, changes made to the data should be traceable and verifiable, ensuring no unauthorized alterations. Availability, processed data should be available for the next stages of the life cycle. Now, I developed a system for recruiting people for a program in West Africa here for USA. And interestingly, one challenge that I had was that the data comes into a data warehouse that is online. So all the data is there. But what I realized, and I developed an what you call an administrator access platform for you to be able to sort the data out according to the different by gender, by country, by program the person is looking for, because it was a training program. But then what I realized is that those who are supposed to process the data make selection out of 7,000 people have applied. We want to select only 500 of them for interview. And then at the end of the day, we will select only 120 of them for the program that USA was going to offer for them. Now, the challenge I was having was that the data processors will download the Excel. I created a download option. They'll download it into Excel, and they'll go and work on it in Excel and then come back and say that these are the names we have selected and we want to take them to the interview stage. So, and I told them that no, if you do that and anything, people may even introduce other names that we are not very sure of. And the data you have downloaded, you have just downloaded everybody's data, but you are not synchronizing. The idea was that you could actually have the person's profile, read about it, and if you make a choice of the person, you write the reason why you made a choice. But when you take it to Excel, you make choices based on maybe your own discretion. There's no way the live platform can capture that. And we also didn't want to, after we collected the data, we didn't want to introduce any other data upload unless you're on the platform, so that we could actually track changes, log on all the changes that are being done on the database. So for one challenge I had was that anytime that they were going to do the interviews, then they'll come back and call me that find a way, we have selected these 80 people of this 500, find a way of approving them in the platform so that we can actually go ahead and interview them through the platform. I said, are you not using the same system that I've developed to be able to do your shortlisting? If you shortlist in the Excel and you come back onto the platform, then the challenge they are going to have is that you couldn't use it to do the shortlisting, and it's going to be more of a manual process for me to actually write another code for it to check the data, like where the person is called Boateng Richard with this email address, change the person to selected or shortlisted. That's the kind of thing I had to try and do. But the challenge is that it wasn't easy for me. It will come at a cost to you. So what I ended up doing is that they had to come to a middle ground. They sometimes want to work offline, they sometimes want to work online. So I had to now create another application in which when they work offline, they can come back to online and say, and they do manual selection, selected. Then I told them that anytime you do that, that means that you are doing a manual selection. You are not using the intelligence in the system to be able to do the selection. If you do a manual selection, then you have to add the reason why you did the selection, and then you have to log on who did the selection. So sometimes human nature is what makes it very difficult for you to even have a system that is seamless and quite automated, because human beings want to find a way of being involved in the process and adding their own discretion to anything that the computer is doing. Okay. If you have a question, you can ask as I go on. Storage, confidentiality. Stored data should be encrypted and protected from unauthorized access. And this one happened especially with sensitive data that's to do with their passwords, and sometimes some information that's identifiable. So that you can, somebody may not be able to have access to it. So encryption means that it's actually enveloped in another layer of information so that you cannot be able to decipher the data that is there. So if I look at it to make no meaning to you, because it has now been enveloped in something else that you need to use to be able to decrypt it, you to understand the information that is there. And an example is your password. If I come to your system and show your password, you may not be able to even I see any characters there, because it has been enveloped in something that is used to be able to protect the information. And the only way that you can be able to know the password is through another set of series of activities that will allow you to, even that you can never even know the password, because we are also protecting it from I who designed the system. So the only thing you can do is to request that your password to be changed, because nobody will give you the opportunity to be able to decrypt it. Okay. Checksums and regular audits can help ensure that data stored remains unaltered. Okay. And that has to do with the logging of the information that is there, so that anytime anybody goes into the data, we log and find out who was in here, what did he do. We check what did he even click on whilst he was in the platform. Then availability data should be retrievable when required. Which might necessitate the backup of systems and redundancy. Now, one thing that I've also realized is that even if we design very good systems, our needs can change. And then when the needs change, it means that we have to try to make sure the system is adaptable. The data has not changed, but the need has changed. So when the need changes, we have to make sure that we can be able to design our system to have a future orientation. What do I mean by that? I'll just give an example. When I was in Kenya, we developed a platform for managing students' records. And then at that time, Kenya used to open a new semester in, I think, September, if I'm right. Good, at that time. So anytime the semester started in September, not in the August that Accra, like University of Ghana and then Cape Coast was using. So when we designed the system at first, we had coded the date of reopening into the database. So when the system will never open for people to do registration until that day happens. Because we knew that until either the month is September, you cannot actually log on. Because we always knew that September when we will start a new academic year. But I designed it. We designed it at the time I was doing my national. I did it as my project work, and I went on to do national service with it. So by the time I started my national service, there was a new rule that came that we wanted to change our timetable to suit the university's own. So can you imagine that we had to go back and actually go back to source code, remove the date as September 1st, or check whether it's September, and then make it a variable, and then put it into the system that when you are installing the system, at any point in time, you can see when you are creating a new instance of an academic year, you could actually change the date of reopening. And when you change the date of reopening, it affects the whole system and how, in terms of the data you collect for the next academic year. So what I learned from that is that if you design systems and you are thinking of human behavior only today, you are going to have a problem. The data will not change, but the human behavior and their needs will change. So the systems has to be intelligent enough or have the flexibility for you to be able to accommodate the human decisions. But this is where that means that you are creating, you also have to put the right policy so that people don't abuse it. So who then has authority to change the date? That's the question that comes up. Can anybody just go? For example, a person is a blogger. I think you heard about these things when you were in school. Somebody will not register, then go to UK and go and work. Then when the registration period is over, then he's begging his friends that, can you register me? Now, if the system is set that you can't, registration start at the date and ends at the date, you need permission from sometimes even the Pro Vice Chancellor for academics before they can register you. I think that's what UG is doing now. So when the registration is over, it's over. But that is the policy. So for the system to be open, the person who is sitting behind the computer needs to upload or have a written document that says that you have been given permission to register Convener for this particular reason. And that is scanned so that you can enter the information about that permission. And then you can go into the system and then use that one to open the system. If you don't do that, what you have is that anybody who can find some money and give it to the guy sitting behind the computer, you open it. And if you open it, but we realize that even with that policy stuff, still people find a way of even sorting people out and they get it open. For example, Convener has been authorized that you should register. But as soon as you open the system, anybody who has not registered can register. So when Convener gets his letter, the person who knows that maybe Adjo has not registered, Kwesi has not registered, Memuna has not registered, as soon as you open this, then you call Memuna and say, oh, Charlie, the Convener, it has been open for Convener now. Now the system is available. You go and register right now, then we'll pass you through. But the letter, that is a policy, which is not a software. The letter that came as an authority note doesn't have the name of Memuna, Kwesi, and Adjoa, but the guy goes ahead to do the registration. That's where you see corruption taking place. So then another thing that can be done is that as soon as you start doing the editing of the open the system, a notification has to go to the vice chancellor or somebody at the top at a senior level to approve that this data, the data of this person has been allowed for doing registration. So if for us to be able to use can you go ahead and confirm, so that it will only confirm for the person who has the letter, they're not confirm for the other restaurant who don't have the letter. That means that the others who don't have the letter may be able to use the system, but the data will not be processed. It may be captured, but it will not go to the next step because the person at the next step needs to see the letter physically before you can approve it. That means that if you're going to, I don't know if you're going to DVLA before and you are trying to pay, they say, I need money, and you have to give me enough money so I can pay everybody. So it means that if you are going to do anything corrupt, you have to try and get everybody in the line of authority on your payroll so that they can all exempt the person or allow the rest to be able to go through. And that's what makes it difficult to be able to develop systems that has to accommodate human behavior. As much as human behavior is important, but then how do we manage it alongside the data that we are also collecting, the behavior, and then the authenticity of the data that we want to try and maintain? These things come up. So management tax like backup should not expose data to unauthorized entities. That's what I just mentioned. Version control and regular quality checks ensure that managed data retains its integrity. Efficient data management ensures data remains accessible even in unforeseen situations. That's what I was talking about in terms of, but this efficient data management can only be happening because we are, for KNUST's own, for example, we have developed a functionality and declared the reopening date as a variable. So as a variable, that means that somebody with the appropriate authority can change the date. Then the system, the system can still be used to be able to do registration for students. Anyway, please, is there a hand up, or I should just continue? Are you with?
There's a hand up, Paulina.
Yeah, Paulina, please, are you sharing or asking a question? If you are sharing, you can go. If you ask a question, then maybe somebody in the class will answer for me. Paulina, go ahead.
I'm asking a question.
Okay.
Okay, so about the integrity you spoke of, we've been having or encountering such, and maybe if you can help with solutions. So with the accounting system, when the period is closed and maybe somebody has something important to do in the period, for some reason, sometimes the authorities involve open the period, the month, for the person to make entry. But like you said, when that period is open, sometimes people get wind of it and they also go quickly to make their entries. And sometimes it distorts the account for that period, like the management account. And even sometimes your reconciliation you've done, you have to go and redo all again because some data have been altered. So in that instance, what do we do? Like you mentioned that maybe you have to, a notification will have to go to the head or something.
Yeah.
Like what would be the...
Okay, so Paulina, the challenge we have is that is your system already developed and deployed? and that all of you are using it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
See, and then the person who developed it does he do maintenance for the system? That if you need more new functionalities, he can come and add on to it.
Seriously, I don't know about that. I'm
Okay, so
I'm
if
an
the
end
person, you
user.
see, if you don't have access to managing the data anymore, the challenge that you have managing the system, that changing the logic of the system, it means that he has given you the flexibility of making a change of opening it up for people to come and do entries outside the predetermined time. Now, the only other way you can be able to do is that the timestamp. When you enter the data, the timestamp. When you enter the data, there's a date the data was entered.
Okay.
And that date of the data was, if it is a field for you, that's accessible to you. That means that
Yeah,
when you generate a report, you can know that this data was entered outside the period and within the period. So I can run, for example,
we have the entry date.
Good.
Like when you extract data, you would see a column for entry date.
Good.
So you see
So
when
I can run, for example, I'm using admission data. I can run admission data to tell you that within the period of admission, we only had 3,000 students. But because we want to hit a revenue of 5,000 Ghana's, 5,000 students to be able to, we need 5,000 students to be able to meet the revenue of $100,000 that we're looking for this academic year. The VC allowed us to extend the period. So the VC's letter has to be there on documented, that was what allowed us to change it. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So what it means right now is that you, in terms of auditing, be able to tell that this was entered after the time. But if there's no sanctions tied to it, if there's no other administrative process tied to it, the technology will allow it to work, but the human behavior will go scot-free because there's nothing tied to it.
I was about saying that it still doesn't solve the problem because we do have the entry date. We even have who did the modification, how many times the modifications were done and all that. But it still is not solving, it's not stopping people from doing it. So,
but if we are going to run maybe appraisals and say that this month only 80% of the data entry clerks, where I'm just using that word, data entry clerks were able to meet their time, were able to enter their data on time. 20%, which this is their list. So show me a naming. Then this is a list of the 20% who didn't enter their data on time. That could actually make sure people will prevent. So if you don't add a sanction to it or a rule to govern the behavior, people will get away with it because there's nothing wrong about it. I can just put it inside it to go to be done. The other issue is that the company may be allowing that because if we don't get the data, it will cost us more than if we run with without the data. So they allow that because if they want to go ahead and run and take decisions without the data, that extra data that they were expecting, if they run without that one, it will cost them more in the long term. So they'll rather wait for everybody to enter their data, then they will run based on that one. But as you have told me right now, I don't know whether there are any sanctions or any evaluation appraisals made for those who, or any even reward for those who enter their data on time and those who didn't enter their data on time. Is there anything like that?
Verbal. Oh, you've done well.
But so that means that top of the heads, managers know those who don't do their work on time. Is that true?
Yes, it's true.
It's true. So we can't do anything unless you get into a place of authority. They can say that, okay, this is, let me use an example. There is an office in the University of Ghana that they take entries up to only 4 p.m. After 4 p.m., the entry platform will shut down. Then that is the entry platform will shut down. Then the physical one that you can bypass and go and put your document there, that one to the box is empty. So, and the book for entry that you entered, you brought your book, that one too, they close, they draw a line. So anybody who comes at 4:01, you'll be the only person who is putting your file in that physical box. If you send an email at 4:01, the system will send you, and you send the document via email or upload it. The system will send you that your thing was submitted after 4 o'clock. We do know the office closes at 4 o'clock. This document you are submitted will be worked on tomorrow. Will be worked on as part of the things that we'll receive tomorrow. So that means that you will not jump the queue and be part of the thing that we process today. So only those who are submitted as of 4 p.m. will process in the evening, and then the processing takes place in the last 1 hour. Like it's people's payments, so they'll process it and you start paying. So that means that even if you bought it at 4:01, you still be counted as you submitted yesterday, tomorrow. So that is and it's very strict. Yesterday I was there. I sent the email in the afternoon and told them that okay. And when I sent the email in the afternoon, they said they have received my document. But you know, the hard copy has to come before 4 p.m. before we can work on it. I got there at 4:17. The document was empty. And I packed everything. Lucky for me, they were now coming to cross the book. And I pleaded with them and I wrote my details there. Because what was going to happen is that they have received the electronic version, but the hard copy came late. So if the electronic version and the hard copy don't come on the same day, you'll be treated as the next day. And I wanted to be treated as yesterday, that my things were submitted yesterday, not as submitted today. So I pleaded with them and I wrote, I was the last person to write, and after writing, they crossed the line. So this is how a system is working here. They have combined both the online submission of the data, the data or information you're supposed to submit, and then you submit a printout of whatever you submitted online, a summary printout, and come and physically put it in the office. So they work on the two. But I asked them, why do you have the summary printout in terms of the summary printout as a physical one? They told me that the one which is a printout are used by the auditors, and then the data processors use the online version. So the auditors always want a printout with the signature of the person as a physical signature, meaning that the auditors don't want the e-signature. I didn't even understand it then, and I understood. So that's why they have to work on the documents on the same day. I said, okay. So it means that we're even obeying the rules without even understanding why we're doing the thing twice. But this is how a system works in University of Ghana. I don't know whether it will work with yours, but sometimes if you intelligently combine the physical process and the online process, it can work and also ensure some of the that the data flow is consistent, and then you are also maintain the integrity of the data. Somebody couldn't pass behind and added something, because if you try to do that, one of the data checkpoints will not be consistent with the other. For example, I submitted it online yesterday, and then the hard copy came today. So it means that at the end of the day, if they are going to process, they'll process me on another day, because the two of them do not correspond. The two of them have to be on the same day for it to be processed on the same day. Otherwise, it will be processed on the next day.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's a very good question. Over, is any other hand again?
No, Prof.
Okay. So visualize. Okay, analysis part. The analytic tools should be secure, preventing leaks of sensitive information. Analytic results should be reproducible and consistent, ensuring trustworthy insights. Okay, when we say reproducible, that means that at the end of the day, we have opportunity of producing it again based on the data set. That means that you have actually set up a template that makes it easy for us to pull the data to be able to get insights from it in any other way that we want to do that. For example, the challenge I told you about the USAID project, what I had to do with the USAID is that we have to agree on all the reports they want, design the templates. So anytime people apply for the program, the system can automatically go into the data and then generate the same reports for them. So every cohort, you can reproduce the same type of reports and get the consistent and comparable results with the previous cohort, because it's the same fields that we are picking up, it's the same information that we are picking up from the data. Analytic tools and data sets should be readily available for timely decision. That means that, but it should be available to the authorized persons. Visualization, visual representations should not inadvertently expose sensitive information, which is also important. Sometimes some of the visual representations may end up giving too much information than you are expected. So that one you have to look at. It depends on you as the data producer and the data controller. You are the one controlling the data. Whatever you're going to use it for, you have to agree with your team. What you are going to generate as visual representation, what you're not going to generate as visual representation. Now, sometimes what institutions do is that they have certain types of information that they would like to use infographics to make it easier to communicate to consumers. But the consumers can have that interface. However, when it comes to maybe other type of managers, they may want to see the data behind it. So some of the platforms allow you to have the graph there. I think I've even seen it in Excel before. And then beneath the graph, you can also generate the table that generated the graph so that somebody can actually look at the exact numbers. In case the graph is just our percentage, somebody wants to look at the detail in terms of the numbers. So he may generate a table below. So the graph is above and then the table is below. But that would be for managers. But for what is going to social media, it's only just maybe just the graphs. So we have to also be sure of what we are sharing. When we share percentages, people don't know the actual numbers. But let me give an example. Supposing you are doing an election in the class, and then we are voting for Nancy and maybe Obed, and we are choosing between the two. Then we go out and go and see that Nancy had 80% of the votes and Obed had 20%, but we didn't mention the numbers. Then in another forum, when I'm giving it to the HOD, I give the numbers and I write only 5 students voted. You know that the HOD can say that this number does not form a quorum that can be able to vote for to choose a class prefect, because there are 5 students and they are going to a class of about 27 students and only 5 students voted. Go back and do the voting again. But the person who just had the percentages, he didn't know, because the end value was not given to him. So he just saw the percentage, oh, let's go ahead. But the other person didn't realize that the number of people who voted is even less than, far less than the percentage of registered voters. If I should use that. So that means that result cannot be tenable in terms of making decision on who should become a class prefect or not. So visualization is good, but sometimes the data behind the visualization can give us more insight, but we should be careful who we give it to. Or even if you are using visualization, we should also know what type of information we want to communicate appropriately. Some people just need percentage, others also need the numbers. Integrity, visualization should accurately represent the underlying data without distortion. See, I just said, yeah. And availability, visualization tools and platforms should be accessible to decision makers when needed. Okay. So currently, University of Ghana has put admission data into Power BI. Now, interestingly, if you want to have admission data to be able to understand the number of students which are enrolled and you are head of department, you have to fill a very lengthy form to ask for the information. When you ask for the information and you fill the information then they will give you the access to the information, but only to the fields that you requested for. Now, recently, we went through the process, and the time the data came out, we even realized that the data they had is even less than the data we had from other sources that we have gathered together. And I asked myself, upon all the thing you went through, you didn't even tell us your data is not even complete. We then realized that they are still now collecting data and populating it. Then you have come to announce that the data, you have been able to put the admission data and other data on the university on Power BI. Come and get access to it. But what we did is that we went to graduate school and said, okay, how many people applied? How many people do you have from your system? And we put it down. We went to the school accounts to check how many people are paid school fees. And we put all together to get an idea of how many people are enrolling on a program. Then when we compare to what the people gave us from the Power BI platform, it was far different. And we realized that we had more reliable, up-to-date data than what they had in the Power BI. And it could be because that the processing of their data and making the data available takes time. And that means that what they may have is still going through processing. Whilst we have used manual processes to get the data on our own sheet of paper or Excel document, and we have more up-to-date data than them. If you want to build a data-driven organization, you have to make sure the data flow is not only consistent, but it's also timely. And when you announce something that something is ready, make sure that it's really ready. Other consumers will be disappointed. Anyway, interpretation. Confidential insights and interpretation should be shared only with stakeholders who have the right to view them. Okay, now I think I mentioned something like that indirectly. The interpretation should be based on accurate, consistent data to ensure correct decision making. Just as I mentioned, I collected data first, manually, and somebody is computing it together into a visualization platform. He has less data than I. And the available decision makers should have timely access to interpretation to act upon them. Okay. One thing that is important in terms of knowledge management is that if you give people data, you don't give them the power to act on the data, that will not even help them. So as soon as you are giving them the data, also make sure that they have the power to act on the data within the remit of their level of management authority within the organization. In essence, the CIA triad principles serve as guidelines that ensure data remains secure, trustworthy, and accessible throughout the entire life cycle. Okay. Now, but how quality is your data? You know, all these things that we mentioned, we didn't mention quality data. We just mentioned confidential integrity, and then the last one being availability. But what about the quality of the data? Quality refers to the state of qualitative and quantitative pieces of the data, of the pieces of information in terms of suitability to serve its purpose in a given context. Now look at the latter part, that part, to serve its purpose in a given context. That means that the quality is also determined by the end user or the person who intends to use it. So something may be quality to somebody, may not be quality to another person. To serve its purpose in a given context, to serve its purpose in a given context. So somebody may, this data is not quality because what you want to use it for, and for the context you want to use it, it may not helpful. High quality data meets criteria such as accuracy, completeness, reliability, relevance, and timeliness. Maintaining good data quality is essential for analytics. So let's look at some of the attributes of quality data. Accuracy. Data is accurate when it's data is accurate because it is correct and reliable and free of errors. Okay. If a customer address is recorded as 123 Apple Street in one system, but 132 Apple Street in another, there's an accuracy issue. So I think you understand that. But let me just point out something. Reliability is a little bit different from just talking about something being correct. Something can be correct, but it's not reliable because of the person it is coming from. Reliability also has to be with who will give us that information. So that one, keep it in mind. Because I can get information from somebody, but we are wondering whether it is reliable. Can I act upon it? Is it actually coming from the whole system or part of the system? Okay, then that brings in completeness too. Completeness, all necessary data is recorded and no gaps exist. I mentioned it just as now with the Power BI platform that doesn't have all the information, and I went the manual process that have all the information. In the patient database, if some patients have recorded blood types, whilst others have not, there's a completeness issue. So there are no gaps existing. Now the challenge comes if you don't even know what is the extent of how the complete data looks like. How the complete data looks like. For example, somebody comes to, let me even use an election. Supposing that you go to an election that you have got 27 registered candidates, like I was saying in the classroom. But you know there are 27 people, and you do the election and you realize that, as I said, 5 people. As soon as you look at the number of people who voted, you realize that there's an issue about completeness. Why is it that less than half of the population is represented? So that means that either we didn't read them, or they didn't get the ballot papers, or we didn't get them on time, or we didn't inform them. There's something that happened, and we need to be able to realize that that data is not complete. So for you to talk about completeness, sometimes it's also an understanding based on your understanding of what could be the ideal potential population that you are expecting to have showed up. What are the totality of the data looks like? What were you expecting? If you're expecting something in millions and you see that you are dealing 5,000, that means that there's something wrong. But if you don't have an indication, that means that you don't have a measure to be able to tell whether the data is complete or it's not complete. So in some cases, somebody may also look at the completeness of the data in terms of the representation of the fields that is being presented to the person. You take student data, surname, first name, other names. Other names, not everybody have other names. So it's possible that that part, for some people, it may be empty. So you cannot use that one to say that because some of the field of other names is empty, the data is not complete. No, you can't say that. However, if you design the system in such a way that if you don't have a middle name, you have to select no middle name. Then it means that there is a response is required for middle name, whether either you have no middle name or if you have it, give us the middle name. So if I come and there's empty spaces, that means that it's either the person didn't fill his middle name or the person didn't choose that he didn't have middle name. And because the place is empty, now I'm confused. I can't say that this error is either coming from the data collection, in fact, which is more likely than rather coming from the person who responded to the information. The person who responded to the information could have chosen not to select anything, but I should have found a way of forcing the person to fill the place so that I can get complete data. How would I get complete data? If you don't have a middle name, just choose I don't have a middle name so that I know that the empty space there is not because you forgot to enter your middle name, it's because you don't have a middle name. So what am I trying to put across? I'm trying to put across that completeness has to have a measure of judging it. Otherwise, you may not be able to tell whether it's incomplete or complete. Okay. Consistency. Data is uniform and consistent across different parts of the system or data set. If a product is priced $20 on the company's website, but $25 in the physical store, there's an inconsistent issue. Now, if there's no explanation, then there's a problem. If there's an explanation, the explanation could be that we are doing sales in the shop, but when you go online, we are not doing the sales, so that's why it's $25 there. Or somebody will say that in the shop, you showed up yourself, but $25, you have included the transportation of delivering the products to you. So when we deliver the product to you, it will come to you free. But when you come to the shop, you drove your car there, so we don't have that $5 extra. So there's an explanation. Because otherwise, we expect the product to be the same price. Okay. And it could also be the fact that there's there's an explanation where the company's online website, online warehouse is quite different from where the physical shop is. So you may have your online shop in maybe Springtex, but your physical shop is at Adabraka. So when somebody buys from the online shop, you calculate the distance from Springtex to where the person is and then add it to the price. But if the person comes to Adabraka, the person is paying, standing in front of you at Adabraka, so you can actually get a product and without any transportation costs. Okay. So timeliness, definition. Data is updated and available when it's needed. A stock trading system showing data that is a week old would have a timeliness issue, especially for day traders. That one is very easy for you to understand. Okay. Relevance. Data is appropriate and applicable to current situation or context. For a survey targeting teenagers, including questions about retirement plans, may introduce a relevance issue. So then that's very, very, very true. Reliability. Okay. Data is consistent over time and dependable. That is what you want. Can we depend on it? If the system sometimes records sales transaction instantly, but occasionally takes hours or days, there's a reliability issue. So that's another thing. Why is that sometimes it's available for us to use, at that time it's not available for us to have direct entry. So there's a reliability issue. Okay. Then the uniqueness. No unnecessary duplicate records exist. If a mailing list has the same person listed multiple times with slightly different email addresses, there's a uniqueness issue. And this thing happens, especially if you have a system that you are building the uniqueness of the system from the email address. What I mean by uniqueness is that the uniqueness of the record, that you differentiate people's one person to another person by email address. Then you have to be very careful because the email addresses could be, the same person could be registered, but he just changes a little bit of the email addresses. For example, in my email is richard.boateng. Somebody may write that one. Another time, somebody may write Rich Boateng. So if you're not very careful, if you are using Richard.Boateng, then you have to know which of the platforms am I using. Richard.Boateng@yahoo.com. But maybe if you come to university, my university one is Rich Boateng, it's not Richard.Boateng. If you go into Richard.Boateng at University of Ghana.edu.gh, you get to me. So we may have, when you're using email as the core differential variable between one record to another record, you have to be very careful, because if you are not very careful, what will happen is that people will just create different aliases of the same email addresses to be able to create multiple accounts of themselves. So it may be important that you have a unique maybe registration number. That may be the like the student's number that can differentiate, because that one has a totality of so much information embedded in that, than rather just using the email address. And even some of the email addresses, they just do maybe Rich Boateng, then 2, 3, 4, 5. And so you ask yourself that, is it the same person or is it's a different person that's using? And somebody can even use an email address that's not, it's not consistent with the name of the person. So you may not be able to differentiate who the person is. You think that if you look at the email address, you can tell who the person is, not necessarily. It's not the person. The person may, somebody may call Akosia Ejiwa Oforiwa, but her email address is lucky girl 256 at this. It has nothing to do with the name of the person. So if you're expecting that should be the same thing, that would be very difficult for you to interpret. But what we want to say here is that if you want to create a unique record, there should be other information that can come together that can differentiate one record from the other. Sometimes the student number for a student platform, the student number may be the best one to be used. That will be a unique record, because the index number will exist only once, or the person's student number will exist only once, and that number can have so many other things tied to it. Okay, but it's possible that you can find only one person who will use this email address, lives in Accra, went to school here, and is at this age and this. That when you start combining the different fields, you can have one unique person created, and then you can see this is that person. You can identify who the person is. Okay, so we don't want duplicate records in a system while the person is showing the same picture. No, we don't want that. We don't want that at all. Now, one of my former supervisors developed a model to be able to assess the attributes of data, and he summarized all the things I've talked about into 5 more important points. He said completeness of the data, accuracy of the data, relevance of the data, timeliness of the and appropriateness of the data in terms of its presentation. So he said he called it the CARTA model, CARTA, as a simple way that organization can use as a tool to check the attributes of the data that they have. Because there are so many other dimensions, but I'm just saying that this is a simple tool that the person, my supervisor, developed. He wrote a book on implementing and managing e-government, and he presented it there, the CARTA model. Okay. Any question? So this is the end of that switch. Oh, there's a hand there, Abdul. Abdul, go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Please, can an end user determines if a data is quality to him or her depending on the relevance? So, for example,
What you are saying is true. The
yes,
end user is the one can determine whether the data is quality. You, the end user that is going to use it, you ask yourself whether the data is quality or not. You, the end user, is it relevant to the decisions you're going to make for a given context or the purpose you're going to use it for?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. But I was thinking that in a scenario where there are 2 students, one lives on campus and the other lives somewhere like Kaswa, and
Okay.
if there is a weather forecast predicting rainfall, so the one on campus might not, be that bothered compared to the one from Kaswa, knowing the traffic situation and also flooding and all that. So maybe the weather forecast has a genuine data, and they know it's likely that it will happen. For their side, they know it's a very reliable data. But these 2 students, one will value it more than the other. And so I'm seeing that from the uh, data scientist point, he will have his data, but the end user will also determine whether its relevance, will also determines how quality the data is for him or not.
You are right. I don't have a problem about it. You are right. Even sometimes when you, the end user, you have actually asked the data to be appropriately presented to you in a particular way. When you are looking at it, you can even start asking yourself more questions. What if I wanted to know that how many, like like you're looking at student data and you ask for gender and they brought it to you, but all of a sudden as you're looking at the data, you say you wish you could know how many by gender have scholarship, but that's you didn't specify it in your initial request, so they didn't add the scholarship dimension so that you can become the three-dimensional data for you to look at. So now you want to add layer it with financial information, the town the person is coming from, and whether the person has scholarship, and whether the scholarship is either coming from University of Ghana or external scholarship. Now you can start layering other information on it. And that's one of the reasons why the new tools that we are using like Power BI and then Tableau are very, very good at. You could, so far as you have access to those other fields, you can add, as you are looking at just the student data in terms of gender, you can add other fields. And as you add other fields, you can start segmenting the data based on what you are adding. And it's very, very visual, it's very, very interactive. So it does it in real time. That's in real time.
Okay, sir.
That's it. You have not started using Power BI, have you?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. So maybe Ober remind me when I do demonstrations, maybe I have to do something like that with them. And I'll see then we can look at the information of how we can look at how we can hide data then within the same visually hide data. The people are looking at it, but they don't see what we want to tell them. And another person will give you no access for him to see what we want to tell them. Okay. Yeah. Abdul, thank you very much. Okay. Oh, but is there any other question?